Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we try to take really complex, sometimes pretty controversial documents and, well, sort of break them down into insights you can actually use.
hmm
And today we're doing an especially critical deep dive. We're looking into a document that our sources claim lays out a long-term plan, a plan with, frankly, profound alleged implications for all of us right now.
That's right. And this is information that the sources really emphasize everyone should be aware of. They frame knowledge itself, understanding this stuff, as a powerful form of protection.
Exactly. So our mission today is to pull out the crucial arguments, the perspectives from these materials, and give you a distilled understanding of what these documents claim is happening right now around us.
And what the authors suggest it means for you, for your future.
For sure.
The emphasis here, it isn't just theory. It's about, well, paying attention. Paying attention to what the sources describe as signs that are allegedly unfolding as we speak.
Now, some people might hear this and immediately think, oh, conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
But our approach here is just to meticulously look at what the documents themselves actually assert. What do they say?
Right. So let's get into the specifics. What are we actually looking at today?
Okay, so the main source is a document titled NASA, The Future of War, The Future Is Now. It's by Dennis M. Bushnell, who is the chief scientist at NASA Langley Research Center.
Okay, a NASA chief scientist. That's significant.
It is. And we're also drawing from a transcript. It's from a YouTube video called NASA Warfare Document Plan to Kill Mankind Population Control. And there's some other material cited from a website, stopthecrime.net.
So a mix of official-sounding documents and, well, other interpretations.
Exactly. And together they paint a very comprehensive and honestly pretty unsettling picture.
Yeah, and one of the things that jumps out right away, apparently, is how this NASA document, it talks about future warfare. But almost immediately, the sources say it hints at something much more immediate. There's this subtle contradiction. And this whole deep dive really is about illuminating why the sources think awareness of this is so vital. They frame it as revelation through knowledge. That's the path forward, they say, not some kind of reactive revolution.
Revelation, not revolution. That's a key phrase here.
It is. The idea is that understanding these alleged systems, these intricate plans, allows for an informed response, recognizing the signs, navigating what's happening.
It's about learning to respond with awareness, isn't it? Not just reacting out of fear or confusion.
Precisely. The sources suggest that not being reactive, that ability to see clearly, that's like a new superpower in today's world, to see through what's allegedly going on.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The revelation of this NASA war document. The sources suggest it's basically an alleged blueprint for control.
Yeah, let's get into part one, the revelation.
Right. So the core document we're talking about is this PowerPoint presentation, authored by Dennis Bushnell, chief NASA scientist at Langley. And it was reportedly found on the official NASA website, presented back in July 2001. Just a few months before 9/11.
Wow, okay, the timing itself is interesting.
It is. And the YouTube source, they highlight this immediate, quote, uncomfortable realization when they found it.
An uncomfortable realization. What was that about?
Well, it stems from the title itself. The title is Future Strategic Issues, Future Warfare Circa 2025.
Okay, 2025. Seems far off from 2001.
Right. But then if you go to page 4 of the actual presentation, it explicitly says, and this is a direct quote from the document according to the source, the presentation is based in all cases upon existing data, trends analysis technologies, no pixie dust.
Ah. Okay, I see the conflict. Future title, but based on existing stuff in 2001. No pixie dust, meaning no sci-fi, just current tech.
Exactly. That's the apparent contradiction the source jumps on. It immediately suggested to them a definite cover-up. The implication being these future scenarios were already grounded in present capabilities back then.
So it's like they're saying this is coming, but also we can basically do it now. A kind of veiled admission.
That's how the source interprets it, yeah. And the whole premise of the document, again, according to page 4, is centered on robots, cyborgs, and humans. Which, sets a pretty unsettling tone right from the start for this alleged future of warfare and control.
Robots, cyborgs, and humans. So it raises the question, why put this on a public NASA website if it contains these kinds of claims?
Well, the YouTube source has a theory on that. They suggest that, quote, the Illuminati, the most wealthy rich men on the face of the planet, always telegraph everything that they're going to do.
Telegraphing. So putting it out there intentionally, but maybe hidden in plain sight, not expecting most people to notice or understand.
But that's the interpretation, like a message for those in the know, perhaps.
Yeah.
A statement that's public, but not really public.
Okay. And that idea of telegraphing intent becomes even more, well, disturbing when you look at what these documents allegedly say about human life itself.
Yeah, that takes us straight into maybe the most shocking part. The alleged redefinition of humanity, its value.
Right. So page 66 of the NASA document. This is where it gets really stark, according to the sources. It apparently contains statements about human capabilities, or rather limitations, and cost effectiveness.
What does it say specifically?
It asserts that, quote, increasingly critical are human limitations and human downsides. And then it gets specific. Humans are, quote, too large, humans are too heavy, too tender, humans are too slow, both physically and mentally, and we require huge logistical trains, meaning we cost way too much money to maintain, and humans have rapidly decreasing to negative value.
Wow, negative value. That phrase just hits hard.
It does.
And the sources stress this isn't just an emotional thing. It's presented as a cold, hard calculation, a logistical economic assessment within a military strategy context.
Yeah, the implication seems to be that humans are becoming a liability, an inefficient resource in this future they're mapping out, which relies heavily on technology.
So if you have negative value, what does that mean strategically? It sounds like it paves the way for, well, for replacing humans, doesn't it?
Yeah.
With autonomous systems or something else.
That's exactly how the sources interpret it. This section sort of sets the stage for what comes next. If humans are a liability, then logically you explore alternatives or modifications.
Modifications?
Well, look at page 9. The document claims, quote, humans have taken over and vastly shortened evolution. And building on that, the source interprets this to mean the global elites believe they can now direct evolution.
Direct evolution? What does that even mean?
And they even claim to have accomplished immortality.
Oh, okay. Back up. Accomplished immortality. That's a huge claim. How? What are they talking about?
The source suggests this points to a deep transhumanist agenda. Directed evolution isn't natural selection here. It's engineered, controlled.
So like genetic manipulation,
Yeah.
cybernetics.
Could be. Aligning with that robots, cyborgs, and humans theme. Maybe transferring consciousness into machines. The YouTube source really emphasizes this isn't future speculation in their view. They claim these technologies were already deep in development for decades before 2001.
Decades. So a long-term, maybe covert technological push.
That's the picture painted by the source. A kind of hidden technological progression leading to this alleged redefinition of what it means to be human.
Okay, this is already incredibly heavy stuff. Redefining humanity, negative value. It doesn't stop there, does it? Let's move into what these sources call the quiet war machine, this idea of unconventional warfare and societal control.
Right. Part 2, the quiet war machine. And the term itself is suggestive, isn't it? A war that maybe you don't even recognize as a war.
Exactly. So what are these new forms of attack they talk about, particularly on the homeland?
Well, the YouTube source flags page 93 of the NASA document again, and it contains some, frankly, shocking statements, according to them. It apparently says, quote, capture, torture Americans in living color on prime time.
Good grief. Seriously.
That's the quote provided by the source. And it goes on to detail alleged plans for, quote, terror attacks within the continental United States using binary biologicals, designed specifically to take down critical infrastructure.
Binary biologicals. Those are the kind where you mix two less harmful things to make something lethal, right? So insidious, targeted, not like a conventional bomb.
Precisely. And aimed at infrastructure. Then there's the tech weaponry. It mentions using EMP, which is an electromagnetic pulse.
Right. EMPs fry electronics. Big disruptions.
Yeah. And also, quote, radiation frequencies against our brains, etc., and conduct serious SAR and collateral damage and exploitation.
SAR specific absorption rate. That's about how our bodies absorb RF energy. So they're talking biological effects, not just blowing things up, hitting our minds, our bodies.
And here's where it gets really interesting, connecting back to information control.
Yeah.
On that same page, page 93, the document allegedly mentions exploiting the CNN syndrome.
CNN syndrome. What's that?
It apparently identifies CNN directly as a, quote, news media network propaganda machine, allegedly set up by the CIA.
Wow. Okay. So the document itself supposedly calls out a major news network as a propaganda tool.
According to the source, yes, highlighting the role of managing the narrative psychological operations as part of this modern warfare.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not just weapons, it's controlling what people think and believe.
The source even mentions a movie, War, on StopTheCrime.net for background on CNN's alleged origins, suggesting this isn't a new idea to them.
Right. It connects to this whole idea of a quiet war, where controlling perception is key. And that leads us to another document the sources say is absolutely essential.
Which one is that?
Silent Weapons, Quiet Wars.
Okay, tell me about that one.
The YouTube source really pushes people to read it. It's described as a 41-page document, an operations research and technical manual, allegedly from a 1954 Bilderberg policy meeting.
1954, wow.
Yeah, it's called a declaration of war by the source, but one that's not hard to read, implying it's quite explicit.
A declaration of war against whom?
Humanity, essentially. The source claims it lays out the strategy to control the population, explaining how this new quiet war machine, quote, stood, so to speak, in sparkling gold-plated hardware on the showroom floor by 1954.
So, fully formed, ready to go, back in the 50s, that's the allegation.
That's the allegation. A ready-made system for control.
And how does it allegedly work? Does it mention politics?
It reportedly does. It discusses how the political system, the whole right and left thing, was engineered.
Engineered? How so?
To allow people to vent, air grievances, feel like they have a say. But according to the source's interpretation, quote, the bankers were behind everyone who was elected and they laugh at us.
So a controlled demolition derby. Political theater, basically. Channeling dissent into safe avenues while the real power stays hidden.
That's the picture it paints. Systemic manipulation. And it gets even darker when it talks about the population itself. The source highlights the very last statement in the Silent Weapons document. It apparently says, quote, Factor 6 cattle. Those who will not use their brains are no better off than those who have no brains. And so this mind school of jellyfish father, mother, son, and daughter become useful beasts of burden or trainers of the same.
Factor 6 cattle. Useful beasts of burden. My God, that's... Dehumanizing doesn't even cover it.
No, it really doesn't. It frames a world where people are deliberately kept ignorant or compliant, reduced to serving the system.
And this connects back to the negative value idea from the NASA doc, doesn't it? And the source links this economic control to actual warfare, too.
Yeah, they claim one reason people are sent to war is population reduction. Because, allegedly, they have stolen from them. They've taken real labor service in exchange for illegitimate false fiat money, so they have to eliminate the creditors.
Eliminate the creditors, meaning the people they owe. So war is a tool for balancing the books in a horrifying way.
That's the stark economic motive presented.
Yeah.
It portrays war not just as politics by other means, but as, well, financial and demographic management. A tool in this quiet war.
It suggests a total system of control, doesn't it? Politics, economics, warfare, even down to basic societal structures.
Exactly. The sources claim these documents detail the orchestration of society itself, starting with food.
Food? How?
They allegedly discuss doling out poisonous foods. Not what people need for health, but, quote, what we want. Manipulating desires, getting people hooked on things that ultimately harm them. A slow, insidious control.
Wow. And does it go deeper into social structures? Like the family?
Oh, yes. The source claims the documents detail how they set up all the social engineering, how they divide the family, how they crumble the family, how they set up the war machine, how they influence thinking in the family unit to allow the family to give up their children to war for a rich man's fod.
So breaking down the family makes people more pliable, more willing to sacrifice their children for agendas they don't understand.
That's the alleged strategy. Undermining the foundational unit to make individuals more dependent on the state or these larger forces and more susceptible to manipulation.
This is disturbing on so many levels. And then there's this concept of artificial wombs. What on earth is that about?
Yeah, that one's really out there. The stated objective, as quoted by the source, is to provide a stable environment for both stable and unstable activity, to provide a shelter for the evolutionary process of growth and maturity, survival, to provide security for freedom, and to provide defensive protection for offensive activity.
That sounds incredibly abstract. What does it mean in practice?
The interpretation is that they're designed to keep people, well, crippled, quote, numb with foods that our pineal gland is interfered with, preventing higher consciousness.
It's not necessarily a literal womb, but a controlled environment. Physical, mental, maybe spiritual, designed to limit human potential. Keep people docile.
That's the idea. The source compares it to The Matrix, which they claim is based on a DARPA document, and even Rosemary's Baby. Metaphors for a manufactured reality, controlling development and potential from the very beginning.
Creating a population that can't reach its full potential, kept in a sort of engineered infancy.
Exactly. An engineered society within a controlled environment.
And this control extends to education too, doesn't it?
Yes. The Iron Mountain Report, another document the source points to, allegedly states they plan to control the educational system, eventually replacing it with computers.
Replacing teachers with computers.
And the NASA document apparently supports this, talking about telecommuting, teleshopping, teleentertainment, teletravel, teleeducation.
All the tele-everything.
Right. And the source points out a significant consequence. This digital shift makes it much easier to rewrite history, change information on the fly, like altering books on your Kindle without you even knowing.
Centralized digital control over information and history. That's powerful.
The source gives this anecdote, maybe you've heard similar things, about a weather reporter supposedly changing the definition of sunshine to soft sunshine.
Soft sunshine. Why?
The source links it to atmospheric poisoning from geoengineering, allegedly. The point being, language itself, our perception of reality, can be subtly manipulated. It's ongoing information control happening right in front of us.
So this isn't just about future plans anymore. This brings us to what the sources call the now of warfare. Things allegedly happening right now. Direct assaults on health, environment.
Exactly. Part 3, the now of warfare. Let's start with the alleged war on the human body and mind.
Okay, what are the key elements here?
First, fluoridation. The source claims massive fluoridation across the United States is to collapse the ability for us to think, effectively shutting us down right now, a direct attack on cognitive function.
So fluoride not just for teeth, but as a means of mass cognitive dampening. That's the claim.
That's the claim. To create a more passive population. And it's not just fluoride. The source paints a picture of ubiquitous contamination. Life is like walking through a landmine field, they say.
Landmine field, what kind of mines?
Poisonous elements everywhere, in aspirin in the food, dyes and chemicals on everything, even on thermal paper, receipts that we get from filling our cars with gas.
So constant low-level exposure from countless sources designed to degrade health over time.
That's the assertion. Widespread, intentional contamination. And then there's something even more sci-fi sounding. Microdust.
Microdust? What's that?
The NASA document apparently describes micron-sized mechanized dust, which is distributed as an aerosol and inhaled into the lungs.
Inhaled, like breathing it in.
Yes. The dust mechanically bores into the lung tissue and executes various pathological missions.
Mechanically bores into lung tissue, executes missions. That sounds terrifying, like tiny robots attacking from the inside.
It does, and the source highlights that this is characterized in the document as, quote, a completely new type of warfare, and it is legal.
Legal? How can that be legal? Does the source explain that?
The source emphasizes the word legal as particularly chilling, implying it operates outside existing frameworks or exploits loopholes. It suggests a deliberate design to be deniable or unregulatable under current laws. But maybe even more pervasive is the frequency warfare aspect.
Yes, frequencies. This connects to smart meters, right?
Right. Smart meters, electric, gas, water, they're being rolled out globally. The sources claim their purpose goes way beyond billing.
What's the alleged hidden purpose?
Controlling energy allowances, especially if or when currency systems collapse. Directly linking your energy use to maybe your food supply, other resources. It's presented as a tool for total resource control.
So they could potentially ration your power, your water,
Yeah.
based on who knows what criteria, creating dependence.
That's the fear. And the targeting aspect is even more direct. The NASA document and also a U.S. Army report, which the source says you can find on smartmetersmurder.com, allegedly discuss using low frequencies, microwave frequencies to target the enemy.
And the source implies
That we're the enemy, the general population.
Good Lord. So weaponized frequencies aimed at us through everyday infrastructure.
And the scale is universal, allegedly. The document supposedly claims 100% of the human population will be affected by these frequencies.
100%. Affected how?
They're said to jam our immune systems, leading to all sorts of health issues people report now. Ringing of the ears, heart palpitations, skin rashes, ability or inability to sleep through the night.
A lot of people do complain about those things.
And the document, according to the source, acknowledges this interference, even mentions causing seizures. The source stresses, look, we don't need more proof people are getting sick. The documents allegedly state this is the intention.
Wait, the sickness is the goal. Not an unfortunate side effect, but the desired outcome.
That's the claim derived from the documents. It reframes the entire public health discussion around these issues. If the documents are to be believed, the sickness is the feature, not the bug.
That's a paradigm shift in how you'd view those health issues. And it connects to cell towers, too.
Page 98 of the NASA doc, apparently, explicitly states towers will be used to emit frequencies. And the sources point out these towers are everywhere, often disguised.
Disguised how?
As trees, church steeples, cactus, even hidden in signs at gas stations or landscaping at malls. Ubiquitous hidden emitters.
And is there any evidence linking these to health problems?
The source points to a newly discovered cancer cluster at San Diego State University, where students and faculty allegedly got brain tumors. They present this as real-world manifestation of the document's claims.
A direct link, they're saying. And behind all this, there's a bigger project.
The U.S. Brain Project. Started in the 90s, allegedly, funded by 16 organizations across multiple government agencies, NIH, DoD, NASA, DOE.
A massive cross-agency effort focused on the brain.
Yeah. Over 10,000 presentations given, apparently. The source claims this project has, quote, redesigned humanity. And as evidence for how advanced this tech might be, they mention an interview with someone described as a fourth-generation clone called Michael Prince, supposedly killed in 2011.
Okay, clones. That's pushing the boundaries even further. But the core idea is a long-term, well-funded project to understand and potentially manipulate human neurology on a mass scale.
That seems to be the implication. A multi-decade effort to redesign us, internally and externally.
Okay, so that's the alleged war on the body and mind. What about the environment and food?
Right. Geoengineering comes up prominently, often called chemtrails, described by the sources as a secret chemtrail or geoengineering program or weather modification, causing atmospheric poisoning of our skies.
And it's not just one thing, right? You said multiple layers.
Yes. Allegedly, it increases severe weather events, like those massive tornadoes in Oklahoma, cited as an example.
Okay, weather modification. What else?
It allegedly reduces crop yields and increases the cost of the food supply, and, crucially, changes the pH in the soil.
Why change the soil pH?
To make it suitable only for genetically modified seeds, specifically fitting the prescribed Monsanto megacorporation food takeover of the globe. The claim is Monsanto is global food domination, with seeds designed to grow in the polluted conditions created by geoengineering.
Wow. So poison the sky, change the weather, alter the soil, control the seeds, a complete takeover of the food chain.
That's the alleged strategy,
Right.
a coordinated effort. And it ties into this narrative about population.
How so?
The documents supposedly push the idea that there are too many people using too much stuff, and the Earth cannot support this.
The overpopulation argument.
Right. But the sources frame this as fear-based, scientific, fraudulent information, a pretext used to justify policies reducing CO2, greenhouse gases, even leading to things like California's CARB initiative, where the source claims people end up having to pay for the air we breathe.
So environmentalism weaponized, used as cover for control and maybe depopulation agendas.
That's the radical reinterpretation presented by the sources. And it extends to water, too. The document allegedly details contamination of the water supply via intercontinental unmanned vehicles.
Drones poisoning water supplies across continents.
That's the claim. Air, food, water, the absolute fundamentals for life, all allegedly under attack as part of this plan.
It all seems to point towards this idea of total control, orchestrated by, what, who? Who is supposedly running this show?
This brings us to the true state of governance, as the sources see it. They claim the U.S. is no longer under a constitution, referencing the Iron Mountain report again. Instead, it's allegedly controlled by corporations and banks that are posing as a legitimate government.
USA Inc., basically.
A corporate state.
That's the term sometimes used, yeah.
Yeah.
And the agencies listed in the NASA document itself, Air Force, DARPA, CIA, FBI, Southern Command, Atlantic Command, even the Australian DoD are presented as part of this corporate military complex driving the agenda.
And how is this control maintained? Surveillance. Ubiquitous surveillance. Sensors and everything, the documents allegedly say. With the chilling line, if you move, they can see you and you're dead.
That sounds like something out of science fiction.
The source links it to something called PSI technology from Carnegie Mellon Institute, which they claim has a mission to change the entire global infrastructure to that of computers and technology, including utilities and even government policies, a total tech grid.
A digital control grid overlaying everything.
And even public figures are allegedly hinting at this. The source mentions Al Gore's book, The Future, supposedly discussing how artificial intelligence is going to take over and arguing that It's just not efficient to continue with humans.
So aligning with that negative value theme again, humans as inefficient obstacles to a technologically optimized future.
Exactly. The source sees this as think tanks and influential figures openly plotting against humanity, or at least against humanity in its current form, normalizing the idea of human obsolescence.
Okay, this is a lot to take in. A truly overwhelming picture of alleged control and manipulation. So, given all this, what's the way forward?
According to these sources,
This is crucial. Part 4, the path forward. And the message is crystal clear. Revelation, not revolution.
revelation, not revolution. Why not revolution? Isn't that the historical response to tyranny?
The source argues vehemently against it. They state explicitly, we need a revelation, not a revolution. Why? Because a revolution would, quote, only bring in martial law.
Play right into their hands.
Exactly. It would allow people to be targeted with the weaponry that they cannot wait to roll out on us. It's presented as a trap.
And they mentioned specific weapons waiting to be rolled out?
Yes. Drones, the microdust we talked about, beam weapons, and this thing called the blast wave accelerator,
Blast wave accelerator. What's that?
described as a tidal wave invention from the 1940s. It supposedly exploits methane deposits under the sea to create a massive, quote, fingerprintless, plumeless tidal wave.
Fingerprintless, meaning deniable. Precisely. Aimed at low-lying coastal areas, where, the source notes, most of the U.S. population lives. A potential weapon of mass destruction that leaves no clear trace of who deployed it.
That's horrifying. So with that kind of alleged weaponry and the surveillance grid.
Right. The source mentions a weaponized gapometer, likely meaning smart meter data and other surveillance, that keeps track of every house and every movement and every bit of energy. Their conclusion: we are virtually in a concentration camp right now.
So traditional revolution is seen as suicidal.
Utterly futile and counterproductive, according to this view, which shifts the entire focus.
To what, if not fighting back physically?
Education. Awareness. The primary solution offered is starkly simple. People need to become educated as rapidly as possible. Knowledge is presented as the real weapon, the real defense.
Become educated. Okay. Educated about what specifically? What should people be looking at?
The source urges immediate study of those key documents we've mentioned. The Silent Weapons Quiet Wars document, 41 pages, the alleged 1954 Bilderberg Manual, the Declaration of War.
Okay, silent weapons. What else?
The Iron Mountain document, the one that allegedly details pollution creation strategies and the corporate state setup, and another called New World Order Exposed 1969.
Where can people find these?
The source says they're all available on stopthecrime.net, along with other resources on related sites like smartmetersmurder.com and toxicdrinkingwater.org.
So the action is research, reading these foundational documents.
Yes. The goal is to, quote, move from the illusion, the non-real reality that you're living in, into a new reality formed by the truths that these documents convey.
Shifting your understanding of reality itself based on this information.
Because, as the source puts it, you can't shoot from the hip and look for solutions if you have not learned who's doing this to us, how they're doing this to us, and the documents that tell us how they are doing this to us. Understanding is step one, absolutely foundational.
It makes sense. You can't fight an enemy or a system you don't understand. They use the analogy of the Truman Show, right?
Yeah, but with that crucial dark twist. Unlike Truman's world, built for entertainment, this alleged false reality is designed to kill us. That's the claim. A fundamentally malevolent intent.
And do they name names beyond the agencies? Who are the alleged puppet masters?
They explicitly name Bilderbergers, attendees of the Bilderberg meetings, the Trats, likely meaning Trilateral Commission members, though not explicitly defined, and Skull and Bones as being, quote, in the saddle, setting policy.
Okay, the usual suspects in many conspiracy narratives. Any specific individuals?
Yes. John P. Holdren, Obama's science advisor, is named as being in charge of the chemtrails.
Holdren. Wow.
Mirror, identified only as a former CIA head, and Leon Panetta, former CIA and DoD head, are accused of moving our armies over to NATO and moving without a constitution. They're presented as key implementers.
So specific high-level individuals allegedly driving this agenda. And the proof, they say, isn't in finding a smoking gun, but...
In the statistics, people are dying like flies now, the source claims, from strokes and cancer and autism and Alzheimer's. Diseases often without clear fingerprints, fitting the alleged methods.
An invisible war with invisible casualties.
And the lies of the mass media, defined by the source as the 3 networks and the 2 wire services, are supposedly preventing people from connecting the dots, from seeing the truth of this unseen war.
So the call to action is really about pulling all these threads together.
Exactly. The source stresses this information isn't random, it all lines up. It forms a cohesive picture, an alleged plan for incarceration, enslavement, and depopulation, and massive mind control.
And how does this relate to us right now? You mentioned the now of warfare.
Well, remember that NASA document claim?
Yeah?
The future scenarios from 2001 were based on existing data back then.
Right. No pixie dust.
So the sources argue that the things we see now, the proliferation of smart meters, the rise in these specific health issues, the visible signs of geoengineering, the huge societal shifts, these aren't accidents. They are the unfolding of that alleged plan. It's already happening now. That's the urgent message.
So recognizing the signs around us becomes critical. Understanding their alleged war plan is key to navigating it.
That's the core takeaway. The ultimate defense isn't fighting in the streets. It's revelation. It's sharing this knowledge, understanding the alleged game plan. The sources insist, look, you don't need more proof people are sick. The documents allegedly admit that's the goal. The proof is the plan, as laid out in these documents.
Wow. Okay. We have covered an immense amount of ground today, diving deep into these claims from the NASA war document, silent weapons, and the other related sources. It's profoundly unsettling stuff.
It really is. And the overwhelming message coming from these materials is that our present, let alone our future, is allegedly being shaped by hidden forces with a hidden agenda.
But the most powerful takeaway, the one the sources keep hammering home, is that the defense isn't violence or despair. It's revelation, it's understanding, it's sharing this knowledge widely.
The call to action is straightforward. Get educated. Look at the documents yourself. StopTheCrime.net is the site mentioned repeatedly. Read Silent Weapons, Iron Mountain, and then, crucially, share what you find. Talk about it.
Because, as the source quotes Bonhoeffer, the theologian who resisted the Nazis, silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act.
Right. And by learning to respond with knowledge, with awareness, instead of just reacting, well, that's cultivating that superpower we talked about.
Yeah.
Essential for navigating the world described in these documents.
So the final thought for you, the listener, what new questions does this deep dive raise for you? How might understanding these claims, whether you accept them or not, influence how you see the world around you? How might it change how you choose to respond to events?
Lots to think about.
Definitely. Yeah. Join us next time on The Deep Dive for another journey into essential and often hidden knowledge